Gentlemen, welcome. Steve Maeda here, and this is Divorce and Custody, our workshop. It's a 5-part series. This is part 3. And what we're going to cover here are a lot of the mental and emotional challenges that come into divorce. And this is going to be one of the most important things. In fact, if you've made it this far in our presentation, I want you to know, one, man, thank you so much. You're doing good work. I hate to say things like most men don't make it this far because it's not a challenge in that sort of way. I wish all men would make it this far, but this is where we're really, really going to, get to that cream of the crop stuff, the stuff which is a pivotal moment for you to start taking action on, to start deciding. And that all has to do with your mental health. You might not think this at first. And one of the things I always say is that divorce and custody all starts with how you handle your legal case, because that is literally the most important thing at first. How you handle that is, vital. And if you screw that up, it's going to make everything harder. But if you do not, in tandem, go through what I'm about to go through in terms of mental health, it will ruin everything. Meaning you could even win or do good or whatever you want to call it with your legal case. You could do good with your career, but it will have everything collapse. And I'm going to break that down really thoroughly for you guys. So really quickly, as we go here to the first slide, it is a disclaimer. And in that disclaimer, I'm going to say something very important. One, I am not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, a counselor. I'm not qualified to diagnose anybody with mental illness and to really give you a path of dealing with specific mental illnesses, mental disorders, behavioral disorders, and so on. And what you're going to find in all of this is that this is really a call to take care of those things in the right way. So we're going to give advice on that. Also, I'm going to tell you how my groups and so on help with that. So one of the things is that if you need a mental health professional and you sign up for any of my courses, the best courses, those will fail you if you need a mental health professional. If you are working with a mental health professional and you do my courses, they will complement each other and they're made to do that. So this is very important. And you might be thinking like, Jesus, there's all this stuff. There's attorneys, there's, men's groups, which Steve talks about. There's now mental health stuff. This is too expensive. I will also say that your mental health is one of the most affordable things to manage, as well as men's group stuff. I mean, compared to attorneys, man, it's pretty affordable. So this is something very important to understand in this process. So we're going to talk about things that are very important, but they are there not as a definition. And man, I have a big problem with this, with guys in this whole, field of men's development and so on, but they're here to help guide you to get the perspective and help that is authoritative in this whole dealio. Okay. So what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about a lot of things here. We're going to talk about narcissism. We're going to talk about PTSD. We're going to talk about borderline. We're going to talk about what if your ex is that. We're going to talk about how to heal from that. We're going to talk about how to deal with somebody attacking you in those different ways. And it's going to be a very different type of presentation in terms of what you get from a lot of the information out there. We're also going to talk about your mental health, and that's probably one of the bigger things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about divorce and how it's so stressful that nobody is sane during it. We're going to talk about what is the norm for divorce and what is the norm for normal life. Man, when you're going through divorce and custody, it is a pretty crazy road. So just a quick checklist of some of the things that we're going to go over here is listed down below is what you're going through, or you're going through a separation. Man, it's crazy. It is totally crazy. We're going to talk about what is mental health, what is mental illness. These are two particular definitions that I have. So I don't want to say that they're the definition of what all things are out there, but they're really important to understand in order to get this presentation properly. We're going to talk about what is normal in divorce. We're going to talk about how does your mental health or mental health in general of all the parties involved affect the legal process of divorce? How does that affect your children? What do you do, to fix your own mental health and so on, or mental health in the situation and the road ahead. And I just want to say right here in this presentation, I'm just going to emphasize, because we're going to go through a lot of stuff. And if we want to talk about what masculinity is, what masculinity can do, the definition of that, how you're going to find it, how you're going to be the greatest man, you might not be thinking that right now, but how we can be great men, independent, of fearing the feminine, of fearing what femininity and perhaps political movements or the court systems, which are flawed. I'm not denying that, but independent of all of those things and be great, that is what we are covering today. This is how important it is, and it's a pivot point. And if you can make it through this whole thing, you're going to see how that works and how that plays out. So let's go here to this slide. You're going through a separation. It's crazy. You need to understand that. There's no shame in that. There's so much that goes into this whole process that challenges men in saying, this isn't tough. I have to look at my feelings. This is what a man does. Our normal reactions are to walk or to say like, we just got whatever. Now in our society and culture, our normal reactions are it's okay to gossip and to, retaliate and do what are quote unquote, generally feministic traits. And, to see things in that way, it gets all screwed up, and I don't want to get into labels and so on, but it is an interesting take. We see men now acting more feminine than ever, even in their ways of showing masculinity. Broadcasting on social media that you're tough is like the most ironic form of perhaps femininity that there is. Anyway, so that being said, this is one of the most stressful times in your life. If you are to make it past this, this is a guide to do that, you're going to see that this will be one of the most stressful times in your life. One of my first clients, a guy named Max, amazing dude, college professor, decorated in all different areas of his life. This guy was amazing. I mean, he was 62 years old when he worked with me. So that means he'd be like 75 or something right now. But he was dating a 29-year-old that all of a sudden he said, one of the best things any man could do is go through a good divorce because it will show him everything. And at the time, I didn't fully know what it meant. And I'd gone through a lot of things in my life in terms of addiction and so on, but divorce, amazing teacher, and still learning. What is normal in divorce is insanity in real life. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Okay, so what is normal for you to be feeling right now is insane if you're not going through a divorce. Okay, so one, you got to realize that's okay. But two, because it's insane, we got to get the help with that. We also need to understand an angry person is always right. An angry person is always right. That doesn't mean that literally they're right, but in their mind they're right. A mentally ill person is oftentimes always right, always entitled, and has to make you feel the same thing. It's very similar, right? So a mentally ill or unstable person has a problem with reality. We have to understand this, okay? This isn't to blame anybody, and we're going to get to this here, but these are good kind of like little home bases for us to come to. If somebody is mentally unstable, and that could be you, all right? You need to understand that you're not seeing reality right. If you're in an argument with somebody who always has to be right, who's always entitled, who's vindictive, or who has a problem with reality, why are you arguing with them? Rather than arguing to your friends and telling them how screwed up this person is, why are you arguing with that person? Staying mentally healthy is one of the most important daily actions that you need to do literally for the rest of your life. And we'll get into the definition of what mental health is. General confusion, this is a good path to look at, okay? When we're looking at mental health, and again, I'm not the person to diagnose this. This is something as a guide for you to, seek out more help and so on. And if you're working within my groups, this will be an anthem that comes up over and over again. But if I get confused and that turns into resentment or judgment, sometimes those flip, and then that turns into blame, and then that turns into anger, and then that turns into revenge, and it's attached to some higher purpose or a cause, I can almost guarantee that I need to work on my mental health. Now, what that means is that throughout the day, I might get confused about something. It's like, oh man, I don't know what to do. I can't believe this is happening. Why am I going through this? This can't be happening. And then I start going like, man, if she just didn't have to do this, if this didn't, and man, fuck her. And then the blame comes in and the judgment and all this sort of stuff. And then I go, you know what? No, I'm justified. Like I am justified in doing some insane thing, taking an action in a cause. And this is interesting because most of the causes that are used, nearly all of them they're right. They're factually right. The American court system has problems. Okay. She might be insane or whatever. That could be true. We could prove that. But that train of thinking is what gets us screwed up. But also it's so tricky because that train of thinking is necessary in the healing process. So we're going to touch on this, but again, this is something so deep we need to explore. Much like in the lesson yesterday with the legal game, we realize that there's so much to that we just can't cover it in one hour presentation or workshop. And we couldn't cover it in a 3-day workshop that was 8 hours a day. There's so much that goes into it. Okay, so what is getting help with mental health? So there's a couple things that are taglines for getting help with mental health, and they're things that I'm very, man, I don't want to say demand of my clients, but if you're not doing these things, there's a lot of ways that life, deception, other people's mental health issues, other people's mental illness can come in and screw up your life as well as your own. So number one, getting help with mental health is support groups. It's also therapy. It could also be psychology or psychiatry. And those are all different things. And what's interesting is once you hit that plateau of therapy or counseling with a professional, a mental health professional, if you need psychology or psychiatry, they'll be able to reference you to the right people. Now, we always hear how screwed up this is. We always hear how polluted it is. And don't get me wrong, there's corruption in the whole mental health industry, mostly from therapy and below, meaning like self-help groups or gurus or life coaches, even like myself. There's a lot that is unqualified and gives you bad advice. Things like fire your therapist, like don't do that. That's stupid. That is really bad. There are things that a life coach can help you with that maybe a therapist can't. But that doesn't mean you should fire your therapist or psychologist or stop taking medication that you're prescribed to. Obviously, people were finding out, and I mean, it's common knowledge at this point. It was common knowledge the first time when I was in rehab, like 25 years ago or whenever that was, 26 years ago. Jesus, man. That people were overprescribed things. I mean, that was kind of assumed at that point and then later found out in a big argument within the recovery communities that because that is something that is true, like people are misprescribed, doesn't mean that if you have a mental disorder that you can stop seeing a psychiatrist, that you can stop taking your medication. What it means literally is that you need to find different outlets for those things, meaning you need to find a different psychiatrist, you need to wean off your medication, you need to have things reassessed, and it's a long process. Another thing that's important here when we get to support groups, these are oftentimes free. And let me just tell you, like therapy is something which is inexpensive. Okay, therapy is much more inexpensive to most of the things out there. It's a very affordable thing to do. We always think it's this crazy cost, man. If you want to be your best self, like do it. But what's even less expensive than that is going to be your support groups. And support groups are oftentimes free or donation based. And these could be through your church. This could be a 12-step organization. This could be, if it's recovery based, there's also stuff like Refuge Recovery or Smart Recovery. There's tons of different recovery programs. But I'm going to tell you this, if you have claims of alcoholism or drug addiction in your case at all, so your ex is claiming that, I would recommend stopping for 90 days. And the reason why I say stop for 90 days is because courts will drug test you for a 90-day period. Usually they don't go beyond 6 months unless there's like reoccurring problems. Usually the start place is 90 days. So why not just stop for 90 days? And they'll go hair or nail follicles. So that means like cocaine and all that stuff, which can usually bypass most urine tests, are detected. So why not stop for 90 days and why not go to a couple 12-step meetings? It'll help you out. You might think it's weird or whatever. There's plenty of reasons not to like it, but man, the consequence of screwing up your legal case, as well as if there is a mental problem or a mental health issue, is grand. It's massive. And like I said, we're going to get to it. But if you think it's not, just keep watching. Okay. So let's get into these definitions. What is mental health? So mental health, I see mental health, and this is a personal definition. This is how I use it to coach. So this may not be the DSM-4 or 5 or whatever we're on right now. definition. This might not be the same definition if you see a therapist or a psychologist. This is where we could differ. It's not here to split hairs. This is so that I can navigate my presentations better. But mental health is what I consider to be healthy, meaning happy, meaning calm. You're not stressed. You're not anxious. So to be mentally unhealthy could just mean that you're anxious. Most likely, if you're going through a divorce or just going through the day-to-day stresses of life, you are in a state of mental unhealth or not being healthy mentally. And that's not a problem. We shouldn't be ashamed of that. This should be an assumption that we always work towards. It's much like diet. To be healthy physically, there's certain things that we have to do diet-wise and exercise-wise that are always a struggle. And nobody's perfect at those things. Those are very difficult. This is something that's huge in my life, yet always a challenge. It has to be done daily. So mental health is the same for me. So when I talk about mental health in this and your potential mental health, I'm not pointing and blaming that you have a permanent problem that you should be ashamed of. And even if you do, you shouldn't be ashamed of. There's so much stigma around this. It's ridiculous, right? So being mentally unhealthy is something that we all come into touch with. Now, mental illness is where I do my own definition again. So if you're working with a therapist or psychologist and they have a different definition, you got to go with them and we got to be able to translate between that. But mental illness is when we have certain disorders, right? And this is where it gets kind of crazy. And again, I'm not somebody to assess or diagnose, and most likely you are not either. And that's another important thing. So these are like anxiety disorders. This is things like being bipolar or eating disorders, personality disorders, schizophrenia. This is where mental illness happens, whether that was developed or whether that is something that you are born with. A mental illness means that there's another factor in there. And if there is mental illness, there is a requirement that if you're working with me, that you have to go see a therapist, a psychologist, a professional, a social worker can help you through these things. But these are the people qualified to do that. And actually, just let me run through that list really quickly, just to make it clear. It is not a life coach. It is not the internet. It is not your ex's psychologist diagnosing you, or vice versa, your psychologist or therapist diagnosing your ex, whether or not they met each other or worked with each other briefly. I could tell you the meaning of that definition or that diagnosis if it has happened for you, because that's very common. It's like, well, my psychologist met her and worked with her for 6 months and knows she's a narcissist. So now I can say it to the world. No, that's so that you can work on your problems with that. So when it comes down to people who can diagnose this would be a social worker. This could be a therapist. This could be a psychologist. This could be a psychiatrist. And they could get those wrong. It takes a long time to work with somebody to be able to give a proper diagnosis with certain disorders and so on. But that's basically the distinction that I'm trying to make, is mental health is this thing that we're working towards. Mental illness is another thing. So for instance, I consider myself a drug addict. I take on, with addiction, there's a lot of interesting stuff because I kind of play in multiple worlds. I've worked at a rehab that worked with alternative therapies that didn't buy into the addiction as a disease model. Personally, for my own recovery, I buy into the addiction as a disease model, and that's the path I follow. But I've seen it work in both ways. So I consider addiction a mental illness. And that's something of how I consider it to treat it. And there's many ways to work with it. Just be careful with that. The most established way of working with addiction that has the longest history and the most success rate, hands down, cannot be argued, is the disease model. That's not to say it can't change. It's not to say there isn't room for change, and it's not to say there isn't problems with that. But the other models are new, and there's a lot of people that die because of them. So let's get into this next slide, which is one of our favorite sayings that we hear, especially with women and men going through a divorce. My ex is a narcissist, or it could be my ex is a psychopath, my ex is an alcoholic, a drug addict, a sociopath. They're a part of the dark triad. They're borderline. They're schizophrenic. They have a mental disorder and so on. These things are commonly said, and there's so much information on the internet about them. There's so many books about it. You can read about it. And I'm going to tell you that part of being a victim to dealing with somebody who has a mental disorder like this, or mental illness like this, or a heightened level of being mentally unhealthy, is that you got to be a victim. You got to recognize that you're a victim. But if you stay there, you ruin everything, including your future, as well as your kids if you have them. And the results of that are really, really dark. So you got to realize that, number one, the only person that can diagnose your ex or whoever in your life that is a narcissist is their psychologist, therapist, social worker, whatever it is. Only they can do that. And if they tell you that, it does not mean that you get to somehow be able to blame them for your life's problems. Now, part of being a victim is a process, and part of victimhood is blame, and part of moving out of victimhood and into becoming a survivor or a person in recovery from that disorder is that you let go of that entire blame. It's being able to see it as like, well, this person did a narcissistic thing, and not, I'm a narcissist. Do you know what that's like? This is trauma. I have a reason to be recognized. You need to get the best way to deal with that and move to a point of health and healing is to take a therapeutic approach to how you're going to process through that. Meaning, if you really did date somebody or were in a relationship with somebody that was a sociopath, a psychopath, or a narcissist, telling your friends that is not going to help you get to the other side. That may be a part of the process and a phenomenon that you do, but it doesn't actually help you. What is going to help you is actually seeing somebody to see why you did that, what behavioral sides of you chose that person, decided to stay with that person, decided to help that person. When we get into things like codependency, which we don't hit on too much here, but this is such a established thing that's huge. We see this oftentimes with addiction in relationships, is the addict will do all of the bad things. They'll steal, they'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll harm, they'll do the attacking, they'll do the revenge, and you just loved them. You just only did the right thing. Society says you did the right thing. All of your friends and family will say you did the right thing. You're clean. You don't need to work on yourself. But really, you have something called codependency. And oftentimes, drug addicts or people who are alcoholics will be codependent and alcoholic at the same time. So they'll do both, which is even trickier. What is awesome about all of this? What is awesome? I'm going to tell you right now, if you were dating somebody who was a narcissist and you were in the clear and you're convinced and your whole family and friends say you're in the clear, you have one of the greatest and most established and best support groups to go to that is for free, that will help you and be able to determine whether or not you need outside help like a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist, which you should go to anyway. But that is for codependents, for people who have loved too much and, supported somebody who had a high dysfunctioning problems. You have something called Al-Anon. You're going to live a better life. Or you have something called Adult Children of Alcoholics, or you have CODA, or there's so many different very established people with 20, 30, 40 years experience who are going to be in any major city or small town. They're going to be in any town in any Western part of the world. You can go all over the world and attend it for free. Why not do that? And it's interesting. It's interesting. This is one of the things about masculinity that I hate. Masculinity gets screwed because the courts or women or feminism, and it stays there. But masculinity won't look at how it could hurt or be in pain. And that is one of the weakest things. Like it's one of the weakest things. We're going to get into it more, but man, you have answers that are established, that are agreed upon in all modern day psychology that we avoid. And I get it. You may never have heard about it. You might need somebody to go with you to one of these things. But these are very helpful. If you dated a narcissist, if you dated a psychopath, if you dated an alcoholic, if you dated somebody who has more problems than you have answers. And to think that you don't, you are in a massive amount of denial, and it will only repeat, and it will damage your children in a huge way, in a way that is almost irreversible and tormenting. And we will get to that. So let's get into this. What is normal in divorce? So this is interesting. My wife was a narcissist. My wife was a psychopath or a sociopath. You may or may not be able to read this because there's a lot of stuff on this page, and this deserves a lot more time. But in divorce, we are under an enormous amount of stress. When we're under an enormous amount of stress, we become more selfish. We become more self-centered. We have to fight in ways that we never thought before. We're being attacked in ways that we oftentimes are misinterpreting. Maybe our ex goes to court and hires a lawyer, and that lawyer comes down on us pretty hard. We think that there's this crazy orchestration happening, and it may seem like that. I mean, that could actually be the truth, that they're going overboard on it. But when we're going through a divorce, it is normal. Remember, everybody in a divorce, what is normal for them is insanity in real life. So it could be normal to take on narcissistic traits, meaning heightened selfishness, heightened blame, inability to take responsibility, all these different things that we read on the internet that make us so sure that our ex is a narcissist or whatever it is. All these things are heightened when we're under massive stress, okay? And the person really could be that, but we need to understand that these things are going to come to the surface. So the reason why this is important, if this is normal for people to feel it, then we can start unifying with others going like, hey, 500,000 other people who got divorced in the last year or whatever it is, I am just like you, instead of going like, oh my God, I'm an individual with my back against the wall and you don't understand. All of this sort of mental isolation, guess what? What's normal for somebody who's mentally isolated, thinks that they're alone, thinks that they're unique while being attacked, breeds more mental disorders. What's normal for that person is probably even more insane than a person going through a divorce. Isolation only compounds mental disorders or whatever is going on. So being a sociopath or a psychopath, these traits become apparent and more prominent when you're going through a divorce, or what people do to get divorced. So oftentimes people sabotage their relationships. They, like, for instance, very common in a drug addict world or something like that, people will not have the balls or the tools or understand how to break up with somebody. I mean, this is something that was huge in my life. So they will have affairs, they'll get in fights, they'll be abusive, but they can't just say like, you know what, this isn't working. Can we think about how this can either work or not work? Like what can we do? Instead of doing that, because it's so terrifying or it's so difficult, nobody taught them how to do it. There's no faith that it would work. Maybe they get rejected, whatever the whole thing is that they won't do that. So they do all this sabotaging stuff. What's interesting is that's very common in the drug addict addiction world, but that's also very common in the non-drug addict addiction world. And this is where you see a lot of these narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic traits. What's interesting is for psychopaths and sociopaths, it's almost a given that they're just included in narcissism as well. So they all move within each other. The difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is a sociopath is born with it, a sociopath develops it. Jeez, this is why you can't listen to me on this. And a psychopath is born with it. So that's the distinction, but they have very, very similar traits. And this is like the serial killer stuff and all this sort of thing. When the book, The Sociopath Next Door came out, man, it was almost like everybody and their mother, what the hell? It was almost as if everybody and their mother had said that they were married or knew a sociopath or their kids were sociopaths or something like that. It just got ridiculous into this whole phenomenon of, which is now worse with the internet. Addiction is another thing, which is just huge and a huge trait when we get into divorce or custody battles. When we are in that, man, let me tell you, if you have addiction problems, are going to be heightened. Abuse, another thing, if that happens, it's going to be heightened. Gaslighting happens all the time. It happens on both sides. That's going to be heightened. Post-traumatic stress disorder gets accentuated and heightened. Depression, obviously obviously gets heightened. Suicidal thinking gets heightened. Let me just go through all of these really quick. If you are being attacked by a narcissist, what's the answer? All right. You're going to have to protect yourself. And there are some things, remember, an angry person is always going to be right. A mentally unstable person has a problem with reality. If you're dealing with a sociopath or a psychopath, same thing. What do you do for both of those? In the legal realm, your lawyer should be experienced to deal with them. But in your own mental health realm, which is going to last longer in the whole process, the legal process may last 3 months, 6 months, but oftentimes 2 years. And that's a long time. But compared to living the rest of your life and what it means to be a father, that's a very short amount of time. So all this mental health stuff is going to last throughout all of that. And this is a big turning point, right? And so because it could go wrong here in a mental health way, you could have some real lasting problems with it. So what do you do if you're dealing with a sociopath or a psychopath or a narcissist? You get mental health help. That's what you do. You see a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist that can help sort through this. You should be a part of a support group that can talk to you daily and help guide that. That's massive. If you're dealing with addiction yourself, or narcissistic traits yourself, or sociopathic traits yourself, you see a psychologist. If you're dealing with addiction as well on top of that, usually, which also broadcasts all these things, like addiction, you're going to actually see all of these things in it. Like you're going to see abuse and addiction, you're going to see gaslighting, you're going to see depression and addiction. You need to do something for that addiction. Okay. That could be going to a support group, like a 12-step group. That could be going to something like a rehabilitation center, whatever. And I would just say, again, the traditional models, what they call it, or 12-step recovery, is the most established. It has the best and longest lineage. There's a big problem with it. And there's all these movements to do other forms of therapy. I have worked at rehabs that practice those, and I see how they work. But there's also a lot of holes in it as well. And I would encourage, there's outlets out there. But if you want something that's going to hold up in court, 12-step stuff and therapy is going to be the biggest. If you're dealing with abuse, what do you do? Yes, you have to take your safety precautions. You're afraid. You feel victimized, all this sort of stuff. What do? You go to therapy. You get mental health help. PTSD, massive, huge thing, huge part of my life. Addiction, PTSD, big time things in my life. Denial surrounds all of those things. I'm a very aware person. I mean, look, I worked in a rehabilitation center that was focused on addiction, PTSD, trauma. And when I started to have PTSD come back because of some things that happened in my life, I didn't even know it. It was the other people who worked in that center who told me, Steve, go, like, you should see somebody. And I was so out of it. This is amazing. So I am somebody who's really aware. Like I think I really started working with addicts on a professional level. I've done it volunteer based for 20 plus years, and there's gaps where I didn't in there, but for a long time, I have a lot of experience with it. But professionally working with addicts, being advocates for them, being their coaches, really personally involving myself with them and holding their hand through different things, a lot of PTSD in there. I've been doing that probably for 5 years. I could not even see when these traits were exhibiting in me. The other coaches or even therapists around me were like, man, maybe she should see somebody. I didn't know so much to the point. I was so out of it that the therapist there who specialized in EMDR PTSD therapy, very good at it, highly referenced, who was telling me, maybe you should get some help. It didn't even make sense to me to use them. I went and hired somebody else, which turned out to be great and all that sort of stuff. But that's how much, like, denial isn't a choice that we have of just, I'm not going to see that. That's the surface level of it. These things, when we get to them, especially when we're under high stress in a divorce, which is when this was happening, we become blind to a lot of things. We need to have the right people on our team because we are not going to see stuff. And that is just the reality of it. I am not unique in any of this. This is something that all people go through. What do? We surround ourselves with people who will know, like I did. We get ourselves involved in a mental health community like therapy. It's not your friend. It's not whatever. And I get it. The therapy can be new. I get all the arguments. But if you have an advantage, why not use it? I get it that 150 years ago, we didn't have therapy. We did not have that. We had families. We had the tribe. Well, are you living in that tribe? No, you're living in society that's moving fast paced with high anxiety. And we have all these awesome things that have been developed to work with it. It's not a scam. Like, you want to know what a scam is the self-help world, which doesn't know what they're doing and gives you and says that psychologists are trying to rip you off. They get it wrong. They do get it wrong. Anyway, you need to work with people that know. I've just seen too many people die who kill themselves and all this sort of stuff. Same goes for depression. Man, depression is a real thing. You need to understand that there's a difference between being depressed and chronic depression. You need to understand that if you're going through a high stress time, that you're probably depressed at a state that is beyond what you can comprehend. You need to realize you need to be around people during all of that. This is normal in divorce. This is insane in real life. Okay? But this is the standard in divorce, to go through all of this. Suicidal thinking, very common. What do? Being a man or being masculine or whatever, I get it. I get the feeling of going, man, I don't need anything. I don't need to tell anybody. Get used to talking to people. Get used to being around a group that understands this. And being around a group is only part of the solution. The solution is working very, very intensely with somebody prepared to work with suicide. Who are those people again? It is a counselor, a therapist, a social worker, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. It is not a life coach. It is not, those people can help you. You can have that. Like, the complementation works well. But if you're having really any of these, you need to work with a professional, okay? Especially in a divorce, because if this comes up in your court case, if you're seen as being suicidal, if you're seen as being depressed and you're taking actions on those, like meaning you're making erratic actions and choices, that can come up in your court case, and it could lose custody of your kids and cause a bigger problem for them. There's all sorts of stuff that can come up. Seeing a psychologist and going, oh my God, if I see a psychologist and they subpoena the records, man, no, like it actually works the opposite. If you have a drug problem and you're going to 12-step meetings and you're actively working on it, almost any judge that you go to will be understanding of that, and they don't have to be. That's really important. That's really important to understand. If you're taking actions in the right way, this works in your favor. Stop seeing it as like this point of strength or holding on to it. It's very, very important. Okay. So getting sane. How do we get sane? There's a whole bunch of stuff that we could do, right? One, look, I think that if you are not in some sort of community that is looking at bettering yourself, it's very hard to get sane. Now, I have a community. I sell that. That's a huge part of it. I'm not the only one, but my community works for that. I think that therapy, psychology, psychiatry, all these different things, whatever you need to go to, like I said, if you start with therapy, they'll be able to reference you if you need a psychologist or you need a psychiatrist. They're very good at that, right? And you might need to find the right therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, and so on. That could be tough, but it's worth it. What you want to watch out for, what will keep you insane in this, is not only if you don't do any of those things, and there are many stories where people don't do any of this stuff and then they, tough it out. And that's the options that we've had in the past. There's many examples of this. But let me just tell you, man, the self-help industry will rip you off. Therapy and psychology, man, if you think they're going to rip you off, you're buying into they can get it wrong, but you're buying into a terrible conspiracy. What will also rip you off are a lot of the movements that want to co-sign your anger. So remember when we talked about it, like if you're blaming, if you're vindictive, if you're full of revenge, all these normal thoughts that are so normal in divorce, like, so to be confused, to be highly judgmental, to be resentful, to be angry, to want justice, to want revenge, to want to hurt others, to want to publicly humiliate, to want to physically harm others, or whatever it is, are all things that are super common in divorce. And if you don't understand that and you don't talk about it, you suppress it and you make it a lot easier to act out in those ways, man, there's tons of groups that support that. And how do they support that? Because they use a higher purpose to support it, meaning like a cause. So we see this all the time in men's rights. Women suck. Okay, man, I'm with you. Like, women can suck in ways. Like this is from the age of man All men have been saying, man, women do this. Women want to ruin your reputation. They want to take your money, or whatever. From the age of relationships, that's always been written about and talked about. Okay. When it comes down to splitting, what do we always say? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. These are not new ideas. But in our culture, there's so much detachment, there's so much hysteria, and who the hell cares why or how, but it is more. We seem to be able to buy into a cause, to have to fight, to not have to look at ourselves. And I want you to fix this. This is why I'm doing this stuff, right? Thankfully, when at an early age, I had my ass kicked by addiction so bad that I realized that you have to surrender, you have to sacrifice, that's a good road to walk on. And it's literally what every religion and spiritual path, promotes. And I'm not even a religious person, but it's kind of funny that all these higher things seem to not say go out and hate and kill and sit with your cancerous resentment and buy into a social cause to fix it. They say, no, fix yourself, and that the divine path is within, and yada, yada, yada. So we have a culture that is so hyped up on the cause that it co-signs us not having to look at our anger, why we dated a sociopath, a psychopath, or whatever, why those problems started, that we're going to, stay mentally unhealthy. Very, very important. The roadmap to getting sane is going to be self-responsibility. The roadmap to getting sane is going to be able to follow this protocol, like join a men's group. Talk to men actively, daily, not men who are angry, not like guys who are hysterical and some men's rights thing or in the subculture and hate and blame and the war on feminism. These are all things where there could be changes. Changes probably need to happen. The American court system does favor women with certain things, but is that an excuse to maintain your own cancer when you're dying, when your family leaves, when your kids have problems as they get older? Like was that worth it? No, man, self-responsibility. And maybe you do need something like addiction to tear your life apart. And we're going to get into that because those are the results. Man, abuse and family passed on damage exponents. It progresses. It does not stay the same, meaning your pain and the pain that you do not solve will get worse with your kids, even if it has to skip a generation. But that is some bad stuff. All right, so let's get to this slide. Poor mental health and mental illness, how does it affect your divorce? Okay, so what I want you to get right now is poor mental health is stress, anxiety, blame, resentment. But even at its simplest form, it is stress. You're not at your best. Mental illness is the manifestation of all these other disorders and habits forming and so on. And you could get to stuff that you're born with and yada, yada, yada. So if we have just extra stress that we can't think clearly going through the legal process of divorce, it's going to make everything harder. Now, it's a given. You're going to be stressed. Like, I understand that. You are going to be a stressed person. It's not going to be good. You're not going to be at your best. So we need to understand that this is going to have an impact on our legal case. Everything is going to be harder. It's going to make you be in denial with your lawyer. All right. And denial isn't like, oh, I'm just not going to tell them that. I'm willfully deciding. It may mean that you don't even see it. Stress can do that to you. Mental illness will definitely do that to you. You're going to keep things from your lawyer. Your lawyer is going to be blindsided. You're going to show up in a deposition. You're going to get things wrong. And you're going to have a judgment that is made or a result that comes from those things that is going to last years. And it's going to impact your life. Legally, those are the things that will happen. Legally, you're going to do more things like blow up at your ex. You're going to talk too much to her. You're going to piss her off. You're going to get her to react. She's going to get you to react. You're going to record each other. And it's going to show up as evidence that will screw you in the courtroom, that will end up in a result that will last years. And you can sit there and think, because I get the masculine vibe. I get the mental illness vibe, because women and men think the same thing, that you are going to think that this is justifiable. I don't care, man. I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw acid on her face or whatever the hell it is, that this is justified. And it feels that way. Like this is the reality of the chaos of you feeling that, is that it feels that way. It's real and it has to be handled in that way. But if you take the actions, which is first neglecting to take care of your mental health, support group, psychology, so on, that you take those actions, it will cause permanent damages to your court case. Okay. It's going to ensure some form of unfairness to be exploited in your court case. We already agree that the American court system does not favor men with certain things like alimony and child support. There are problems that happen over and over again. Visitation. Why would you add to them? This will ensure that a system which has some flaws, I probably don't agree with you in the amount of flaws that it has, but it has some flaws, will exploit you. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I see the American court system screw people, as it screwed me, why? My mental health played a massive factor in that. Your mental health, my client's mental health, when they get screwed, plays a massive factor in that. Massive. And then you're stuck with this argument that it sucks. Okay, it sucks. But your kid is the one that's going to suffer. Your kid, man, we talked about in my situation where there were things that were provable that was considered child abuse by the United States in my case with my ex that were against her, but the greater abuse, in my opinion, and again, this is why I consult many people, the greater abuse, the real abuse, the real tragedies of irreversible abuse would have been done if I took them away from their mother and created that whole fiasco. So remember, in my case, how did I win? What did we talk about yesterday? How did I win? It's real simple. It's real simple how I won. It wasn't magic. It wasn't that I did some crazy thing in the courts. I did some crazy thing that was really hard and abnormal and most men don't do because I'd been it before and I've coached thousands of men. I'm a slow learner. I work with addicts. I see it happen over and over again. And man, I didn't want to do any of it. I still am like, why didn't I, really cause problems there? And I could have, and am justified. Why did I win? Did a couple things. Immediately went to therapy. Immediately got a support system of people around me. Immediately got 5 people that I called every freaking day and ran everything by. I got in that support system people that I could talk about all of the crazy stuff in my head. All right. I also, in those 7 years that I was with her, didn't do much wrong. Now there's things that I did wrong, but I didn't do many things wrong. Okay. And then I also hired the right lawyer. The lawyer part is huge, man. He did an amazing thing, but he was one small factor in that. I could have thrown gasoline on that fire at any point. At any point in that. That's how I won. Also, in addition to that, she, in my opinion, didn't do any of these things. Any sort of the normal mental health stress that she was going through, which made her act out in whatever ways, made it so it was easy for her to lose. She didn't act like most likely if she would have handled everything perfectly, we would have ended up with the same result. Expanded standard visitation, same child support, same all that sort of stuff. Now, she ended up incriminating herself, causing all these things which didn't become problems because I didn't press on them because did not handle the mental health part of it right. Not meaning that she has to be an insane person, but at the time, everybody is a little bit insane or a lot bit insane when they're going through divorce. She didn't do any of that, in my opinion. And because of that, all the stuff which made her incriminate herself that could have affected our family, her kids and my kids, could have been prevented. It actually, it does have to do with child custody, but a lot of it didn't. All because mental health was not handled and she hired a lawyer that was not equipped for the job. She hired a criminal defense lawyer who didn't know what he was doing. Great references. Lawyer's a great guy. Like I've come to know that there's a lot of good things about him, but not a family law attorney. So that's how I won. It's not some magic thing. It's because I did this hard stuff that nobody wants to do. And it turns out that she didn't. in my opinion. I don't actually know, but it seems pretty relevant to me. So how does poor mental health and mental illness affect your family? This is the bigger thing. Your court case, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, maybe it goes on for 5 years. Your life is going to go on more than 5 years, hopefully. Your role as a father is going to go on for more than 5 years. Let alone if it's 6 months or 3 months or whatever. Your family and the manifestations of that are going to last forever. And this is really, really complex to break down. Your kids are affected by you separating. Your kids are affected by what she does. Your kids could be in danger from her mental illness. I get all those arguments. But the factor that you can change right now is you. And you being mentally healthy, showing that to your kids and offering your kids stability is the most important thing. And this is interesting because we misinterpret masculinity because we're so out of touch with it that we think overt elements of strength are masculinity. This is a little bit of a separate topic, but I want to talk about it. I talk about it on a lot of the different vlogs I do and so on. But when we look at cheap, immature, or quick masculinity, we see it. It's very easy to see. It's very easy to see what masculinity is. It's strong. It's stoic. It knows what it wants. It can be hard. All these things. Like to have a masculine presence, quick decision-making, all that sort of stuff. But to have a mature level of masculinity, that has to be earned and worked for. And usually it has to see why cheap and immediate masculinity is not the way to go because there's consequences with it. Part of that is sitting through tension. Part of that is being patient. Part of that is being able to take your time with it. And we're all so ready to just jump the gun and go crazy with it and fight because we have to fight because she's crazy. If she's really abusing the kids, dude, my ex and myself did things to harm our children. We broke up. That is part of my fault. Even though I wasn't in favor of it, I thought that was the wrong decision. But I had a long play in all of that, okay? Those are the things that I can change. Wow, that really sucks. Man, am I weak for that? I made a mistake, and it's a tragic thing. With my older kids, I made greater mistakes. This is something, I was talking about this on the call, our men's development call last night as I was giving advice. I was like, man, I hate to say this, but I work very hard to give advice for my clients, to have them have the best information possible so that they can have good lives, to have their kids have good lives. And man, I hate to say this, but I wish I gave myself that better advice, but I'm too deep. That's why I need people advising me. I can't see the forest through the trees all the time. And so that is something very important. Man, when I was using in an addict, and that's not an excuse, or newly getting sober or clean, there were a lot of things that I did massively poor decisions with my older kids. Now, on paper, I could sit there and say, mental illness. Look at what she did. Look at all this. And she could say the same thing for me. Like we both did a lot of crazy things. But how do we fix now? How do we fix that? Now, let me just break down how these things manifest. If you have codependency, meaning like you're always dating people with problems and you're trying to fix them and you're trying to use love as it and all this sort of stuff. There's all sorts of different information on codependence and counterdependence, and you can read about it and you can look at whatever sites. If you raise a child in that, what can happen is they learn things improperly. They build habits that aren't seen right away. They might love too much. They might try and fix everything. They might always see that mom or dad has a problem that they have to be stable for. They start thinking that they need to rationalize. They're always trying to figure things out, right? Or they rebel. Those people have problems later in life. Our society is getting more busy and more complex. It's much more harder to have an even keel. Our society may have things that it's easier for things like rebellion or caring for somebody that's screwed up be worse. The person that they're going to care for that's screwed up is going to be worse than the generation before us because our society has more stimuli towards those things. All right. Addiction is a perfect example of this. I have a client Grew up abused. His dad beat the hell out of him, okay? His dad grew up in a good environment, but was probably abused too, but he abused his son. His son felt shame, just like the dad felt shame. The dad grew up in a society that was like, let's say in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, whatever the hell it was, right? And actually, I'm getting that wrong, 1940s, 50s, 60s. And he grew up in a society where you could have those things and they didn't have as many outlets to be bad. His son that was born in 1970 something grew up in a society where there were more drugs, there was meth, there was violence, there was a lot more room for crime, meaning that perhaps the dad did those things. I don't know. Maybe he did those things, or he had other outlets to do other things, but he didn't suffer the same consequences. This kid ended up in jail. He met more criminals, and this guy's level of abuse is on a totally screwed up level. And when I watch him go through his kids and have abuse with them, I shudder to think, and it's impossible not to see the progression of how bad it is. Those kids are growing up in a world that has more problems than their father did in the 1980s and 90s and early thousands. That's why abuse is progressive. You want to convince yourself that your actions, that you don't have to be responsible for that. And I get it. You're in pain. Pain means you can only focus on the opposite of your pain. I get it. Things are fucked. You can only focus on how to get out of unfucked. And then revenge can motivate you. But at some point, as a man, you need to start thinking, what am I doing for my kids? What am I doing so that not tomorrow, not today, not whatever, not in the next week, you're going to notice a problem, but in 15 years, when you're older and can't even see how and why you affected this person, that your kid is, in nowadays manifestation, working as a prostitute, has a needle in their arm, has like whatever, like, man, I work in a rehab and there's bad stuff. You want to know what it's like to wake up to somebody who's dead next to you and use the rest of their drugs and rob their money and walk around with that guilt. That is commonplace. There's one of the rehabs that I was at, there's a dude missing an arm because he shot up in it so much, which is one of those things that gets sensationalized by movies, and Darren Aronofsky's movie, fairly uncommon thing, but you see that. And that's where addiction takes you. That is made by our society and our culture. And you as a parent are a factor in that. I get it. Your ex sucks. Your ex is doing the most worst, criminal, baddest, whatever you want to call it thing. Do the legal system to fight for that. Don't gossip with your friends. Don't talk shit to your kids. And offer stability and mental health for yourself so that if you do have to go to court to get custody of your kids, you can. But the most important thing that you can do for your kids is handle your own mental health and take that seriously so that you can give them stability. So that if their mom continues to have poor relationships, they can have stability with their father. So that you can go, man, I chose this person who had all these flaws that have now progressed and maybe gotten worse, but had the roots of those flaws, and I chose not to see them. Or you can go, man, I'm a victim of the culture, and because of MTV and feminism, I don't have any problems, and it's all her. What kind of a message do you like? Think about your kids when they grow up and they have a problem, and they get to say it's because of their president, or a TV show, or a social movement, that they don't have to be responsible for themselves. And I get it. All those things have problems. We want to fix them. What's the road to that? Fixing yourself first. I cannot emphasize enough the damage that you will cause your children and your life. And man, okay, let's stop with the kids thing. But when you want to talk about abuse to children, that is the true abuse. Letting your bad habits manifest and exponent within your children. That is worse, and some could argue, than hitting them or giving them that sort of isolation and pain, because that's, you can see nowadays that punching causes harm or whatever it is, right? But the subtleties of your behavior not being fixed, why aren't you doing that? What about the rest of your relationships? What about how you live the rest of your life? You are married then to a belief that you have of not progressing with yourself, of only looking at how society says you can be better and try and fulfill yourself and filling an empty cup. And that's the big thing with a lot of the stuff, which this is why divorce is such a big thing, because it gets the roots at you. It's a great gift. It's a great gift. It's an amazing thing. How do we get out of it? Okay, so let's go to this slide. What do you do if you have mental health issues? Look, everybody's an individual. You need to take it seriously. And by taking it seriously, you need to, see people individually, have people individually work with you. Couple things that I'm going to say that are standards for that is number one, because it's good to have a guide. It's good to have the tools, right? But I want you to act on these tools is number one, look at support groups. They're generally free, very affordable if you can find them. Okay. This could be 12-step organizations. This could be grief groups. This could be men in divorce. This could be something like my group, right? These are things which are very good for you. Why a group is important is because it has 24-hour support. Your attorney and your therapist don't give you that. It will help you before and after, big decisions or big moments, but also in the day-to-day stuff of going like, man, I think this is a good idea. It'll give you an immediate access point to bounce things off people. Support groups are great. They are the most affordable option in this whole thing. And why you would not do them, I don't know. And there's plenty of them. There's a lot of bad ones, right? But a couple of guides, number one, like a 12-step group, a group that is done by a church, a group that is done by people who've had the same problems that you have, like different grief groups, or, sometimes there's groups that have like dual diagnosis groups, meaning you have like a mental disorder and perhaps addiction and so on. But these things are really great. They're usually donation-based. Sometimes there's a fee. A group like my group, I made so it could model those things and be more targeted for men going through divorce or men looking for a certain form of excellence that gets away from all of the like toxic, I hate using this word, the toxic masculinity group, because it means two different things. There's the actual toxic masculinity, meaning that masculinity misinterpreted and overplayed and used to compensate. And then there's the whole social thing, which is usually fueled by angry people that kind of get it, but miss it, and it gets distorted. It's basically like somebody is hijacking a cause or a social phenomenon to hide their pain. So support group, number one. Number two is therapy. So therapy is always a good place to start because a therapist can reference you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist if you need one. The relationship with the therapist needs to be built though. So I always say, just like I say, talk to 3 lawyers, do consultations with 3 therapists. It might cost you money. It might not. But one, you need to feel comfortable with this therapist. You need to be able to tell them everything and anything. You need to be open with it. Interesting thing is if I'm going through a moment, this is me personally, my story and decisions that were made with anything with mental health. If I'm going through something where I'm feeling violent or I feel like I want to harm myself or others, all these different things, it is the requirement by law for that therapist to make a conclusion to see if that person the authorities need to do a wellness check on that person. So in California, it's called the 5150. I forget what it's called elsewhere, but the social workers and therapists that I know and I talk to have never done that with me. And I've been able to be open and go like, man, I'm going to kill this person. Fuck them. That is a normal and natural thought, but their ability, and this is why they're professionals. This isn't like I'm talking to some friend on the sideline, is that they can go, is Steve really under threat of doing that? Okay. So that's very important. But you want to be able to be open with any mental health professional you talk to. You need to build a team of that. It's very important. Very, very important. Okay, so also you need to maintain the basics. So the basics, especially when we're massively depressed, we need to eat, we need to move our bodies, we need to get enough sleep. Physically, these are important. So a lot of times we won't eat, we won't sleep well, and we won't move our bodies. We'll just lay around. Being outdoors, taking a walk, these are all things which could very easily help you out. Eating good food, I'm somebody that eats too much pizza all the time or hamburgers or whatever the hell it is. Eating properly means that we're eating regularly and trying to put in food in our bodies that will nourish us and not just, fulfill something. But when we're massively depressed, it can be very, very difficult to eat. We need to understand that. We need to reach out. We need to maintain a social connection. One ways that I say people stay mentally healthy. So mentally healthy is there's a lot of things that go into it, but being social is one of them. Talking to people, having a normal conversation, having a conversation that doesn't have to do with the social status or all these other things, but like true interactions. That is a very good thing. That's amazing. All right. Personal conversations are huge. When we're in these heightened aspects of pain, it can be very easy to get into conversations, and sometimes we need to, but we need to move past them about the pain that we're in, the causes that we're in. The self-obsession, the pity, the resentment starts to take hold. We want to get into normal conversations. Those are very important. The last thing I'm going to put out for mental health is that you need to have all major decisions that are outside of this divorce, outside of your custody, put on the sidelines. And every major decision within the divorce and custody thing should be run by somebody. So most of that is through a lawyer, but that gets expensive. So I had a couple other lawyers that were friends of mine giving me advice. My attorney told me to stop that because their advice might conflict with his. And when you choose a lawyer, you should get one. So then I had to get other people who were either experienced in the situation, that weren't lawyers, that weren't giving me particular specific legal advice, that helped me navigate different things. And part of that was like, all right, one was me going through a deposition. It was a tough thing to decide. I didn't know how to decide it. I literally took advice from a few people and just went with it because I knew that would enrage and infuriate my ex, that I did that and cause her to possibly be retaliatory in different ways and do things which she did take some actions on, because people are insane when they're going through this. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have to own that. That doesn't mean that I'm clearly saying it now. I think it was wrong. There's things that I surely did wrong in it. But we also need to know that that's a part of the process. But how did I determine that? Which it ended up being a great thing. It ended up stopping everything. It was not my first instinct. And in fact, most people at first ruled against it. But anybody that knew the law, that had experience with women attacking you and divorce, all said, do the deposition. And I listened to other people. So the major decisions made in my divorce and custody case, I ran by other people. All other major life decisions put on the sidelines. All things went as even keel as possible, did the bare minimum, but I made sure that I had people around to help navigate those different things. Okay, so what do you do if you've been a victim of mental illness? And this is real. So I'm not trying to minimize it. I always get this, but no, you don't understand. She was a narcissist or whatever. You don't understand borderline people. I do. I've had relationships with people who have borderline personality disorder. If you don't think I know, man, I know. And I know just how fucked up that can be, how relentlessly evil that can be. And if you really did go through that, then we should probably talk about that, and maybe even your role in repairing and being in denial of those different things in it. So you need to acknowledge that victimhood is a part of this. Victimhood is a huge part of the process. We're going to be angry. We're going to be resentful. We're going to blame. What do you do with that anger, resentment, and blame? Do you go on the internet? Do you join a support group of people that you don't know or maybe do know that are also angry about it? I feel that the most important the most important thing that you can do in that entire process is actually to get with people who can guide you out of it. Because you are in a point where it's terrible. It's evil. You've seen evil stuff. It is disturbing if you're in a relationship with a borderline person, or maybe it's just a narcissist, which is also terrible, but not as bad as somebody who is going to be borderline. What do? How do you stop it? How do you alleviate it? You need to work with a mental health professional who's experienced in that. This is why you need to interview multiple people who can help you sort through that. And then you need to talk to other people and see how they, in a healthy way that didn't cause damage to themselves and their family, resolve these things. This is also where something like Al-Anon, CODA, adult children's of alcoholics, those types of things can be helpful, even though you might be going, well, they weren't an alcoholic. There's different groups that are very established that deal with this consistent type of behavior over and over again. And for better or for worse, addicts exhibit a lot of it. So people that have been married to addicts, who their groups have been around, since the 30s and are very established, can help you out. And there are things and ways that help people solve this. Very, very important. Okay, so you need to then also look at how you said yes to these things. And this is a big therapeutic process. Why did you think this was okay? Why did you believe the lie? Like everybody says, oh, she convincingly lied to me. She's so good. You don't understand, Steve. Like psychopaths, sociopaths, borderline people are excellent. They're masters at manipulation. They understand how to fool their therapist. Okay, cool. But they fooled you, man. And you're the one that carries the damage. Their therapist can fire them as a client and walk away. But they fooled you. Why did they fool you? Why did you say yes to them? If you think that you did not recognize, or if you think that you were unaware of any pattern, that they were just good, they were angels, they were amazing, and then all of a sudden they switched because their secret plot was to attack you and get revenge on your self-absorbent way of viewing yourself, then you are in massive denial. You saw stuff right away. There's things, my ex-wife is an amazing person in so many ways. Like there's so much that I could go through and go like, wow, nobody comes close to that. But there were also things that exhibited ways that she acted towards the end of it, or that got heightened when she got more stressed, felt that her life was trapped, had unresolved things come up and repetitiously affect her, and probably same happening for me at the same time. Those things are building, that I was like, that's nothing. That's fine. Oh, well, there was only one day, a month that she did this, or one day this week. And most of the time she doesn't do this. It's okay. What does that mean? And does that mean that I have to attack it? Does that mean that I have to demonize her? Does that mean that it's no response? No. These are things that have to be solved. These could end up in another relationship. How do they get resolved? This is very important that you have to go through. So you need to take ownership of it and fix it. So part of this whole thing is that if you've been a victim of this, you need to realize that part of victimhood is all the blame and all that stuff, but you need to get around people who aren't co-signing that, people who have found a solution, who live good, who are not angry. Any of those things like confusion, judgment, anger, resentment, blame, revenge, any of those things, if they're broadcasted as a way of a solution to be resentful and angry, you should stay away from them. That is not good, okay? And then you also need to realize that if you don't fix this, it's going to be in your kids' emotional makeup. It's your responsibility to break it. It's our responsibility to alleviate these things. And these problems could, maybe, more than likely, get worse in generations to come because our world's more complex. There's more stress. There's more detachment. There's more great things which benefit us in all these ways. And we're not going backwards. We're not becoming cavemen, right? We're not going to try and hack it and the Dave Asprey lifestyle or one of these other life hacker people, and he could be a great guy. I don't know him that well. I've met him a few times or whatever, but the Dave Asprey hack form of personal development is not how we raise kids. That's not how it happens. It's not easy. And I get that he's specifically not saying that. He's just an iconic person that represents those things. He says the same thing about Tim Ferriss and all that sort of stuff. We need to take into perspective the responsibility that we have. And if we don't think we have it, man, who are you as a man? And this goes to the message that I started with, and then this last slide here. The road ahead of a divorced man. Every lesson after this, there's 2 more, and they're going to be on what your life can be like and the timelines for that. And it's really predictable. In a year to 2 years, your life can be good. You get over it. Everything gets better, right? You might think that's impossible. but it's hard and it takes responsibility, and there's no bullshit to it. There's no misinterpreting strength of masculinity. There's no thinking that you can go out and be strong, or you need to fight more, or you need to attack, a woman's movement or a political thing to get there. Those things could be wrong. I think that feminism causes problems, or misinterpretations of feminism causes problems in our society. And I'll just be specific about it for a second, is that if a woman is being abused by a man, she should understand that independence as a woman is a good thing, because that is her only option. That is great. If a woman is being suppressed and finds herself and gains herself in that should be allowed. Why shouldn't that be allowed? She should have the option and choice to do that. But when we see women who aren't in danger fight for independence and have to find the same enemy in a man that is not abusing them, that is bad. And that has caused something in our culture which sucks. But the worst thing a man can do is buy into that and say, I'm not that. Let me fight back for putting things in reverse and taking away your laws for that. And all this. That is so stupid, because that is not strength. That is buying into gossip. That is buying into blame. That is buying into something is unfair, that is bigger than me, that I cannot change. And what's amazing is we're all Americans who say this. America, which is founded on this idea, which nobody really does, on independence and how we're free thinking and freedom. And we're going to fight for freedom, but we're going to buy into everybody else's idea in order to fight for our own individual freedom, but to find ourselves, to find who we are, which I'm going to tell you this, I don't care about the whole American argument. I just think it's stupid and naive for men to buy into that and not look at themselves, because the greatest element of freedom is your individual road. It is that. It is to do that. It is to find yourself. And if you think that strength comes from you buying into an idea from somebody else because it alleviates your pain, that is weakness. If you think that the reaction to that being strength and showing the cheap, low levels of masculinity, the easy ways for us to define what a man is, oh, he's born with a dick and balls. Oh, men are good with women. Oh, men fight. Oh, men are violent. All these things I love. I love my anger. I love my experience with violence. I love what that has taught me. But to think that there isn't wisdom that goes along with that, to think that wisdom cannot be gained of when there's a right and wrong with that, that is the stupidest and weakest form of man. And we have men like that broadcasting to young men who don't know any better of how to do that. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean we need to get in a cause to teach young men? No, it means that you, as a man, as always, as forever, what it is for you to make a choice about how you live and fix that. And that is masculinity. It is only a message for you. It is only a message that you get to decide, and it's only a message for me that I get to walk. It is not for us to be bigger than that experience ever. And when we talk about walking into the shadow, walking into the darkness, man, this is why divorce is the rite of passage, because I get it. It is pain that you cannot see, that is beyond what you could have ever predicted and wished for or even imagined. And now's your time to walk through it. Now is your time. And if anything, I am a service to help you do that, to help you walk into the greatness of self. And there's not a lot of things in society which show you how to do it, but every ancient text, every religion, every great philosopher, well, maybe not every, but so many of them, all point to that direction, is that journey is within. And that's what this is about. This is the turning point. That's why this presentation is such the turning point. You might have come in here for the legal advice, the legal help. You might have come in here because you're going through PTSD. You might have come in here because you think your ex is borderline and a psychopath. But let me tell you, that is the window and the gateway to look at self, which is going to be your greatest achievement ever. And that's what we do. Not because we are a crowd that is bigger than humanity, but because humanity is made, the individual is made when he realizes that we are all the same in this way. And that is a beautiful thing. It's not something that we can easily get. It is something that takes a lifetime to determine, and that is the road we're on. So that is why this presentation is important. That is why this is your rite of passage. And it starts with you keeping your mental health in check and walking that road. All right. Done for today. Tomorrow and the next day, we're going to be getting into some stuff about what this path looks like beyond it. Your life is going to get good. We always say that. But it is dependent upon you doing this stuff. I'm even going to say this, that you can skimp a little bit on the legal game. You're going to screw up in all of this because there's so many different moving parts, but you can mess up. But if you can get most of this right, this mental health stuff right, man, being able to live a great man afterwards, meaning you're fulfilled in everything, in your mind, your body, your social life, your sex, that includes your masculinity and your purpose and your ambition. Independent of what society says, as an individual, man, your life is going to be good. Give it 2 years. It's a divorce, man. You committed for life. It's supposed to take time to repair. It's supposed to take time to heal from. It's not a quick fix. If you admit that, if you expect it to be a quick fix, which I know your pain tells you to do, then that means you didn't value your choice to get married. It's going to take time. That timeline's 1 to 2 years. Give it 2 years. We'll get you in an awesome spot. That's what the next 2 lessons are on. We will talk to you guys soon. I'm going to stop the recording. So if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, I'm going to get into the questions on Facebook, and we will go from there. Thank you.